Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leaders series. We've got Elizabeth Pienaar today from Sage. She's a product manager for Sage CRM, one of the biggest CRM products out there. And what I felt really interesting today was she works in a role that's very customer focused and very customer facing. And as a leader, she has to juggle many different priorities of teams, customers, partners, and also the product she's looking to create. And I think she's got a really great way of looking at it, and we can all learn from her as a leader as to how she successfully negotiates all those different demands. So without further ado, as I would say, here's Elizabeth, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Elizabeth, hi, how are you this fine morning?
Morning, David. Hi.
Good. Yeah, nice to speak to you. You're out in Dublin today in the office, I believe.
Yes, I am. Yes. It's very empty. It's Friday, but it's a lovely day in Dublin.
That's right. Yes, there's a nice day in Reading here today as well. So we have Elizabeth Pienaar, as we know, here, who's the product manager for Sage CRM based in Dublin. 20 years in the industry, 6 years with Sage, and she's been involved in a few of our diversity panels. I know she's been speaking to Betty on the Connect side, and we thought she'd be a great person to get involved. Really interesting brand that I have actually recruited for in the past. I looked back in my recruitment history, and I think I recruited for Sage in Reading probably in about 2001 or something like that. So yeah, always good to kind of there. And we've been talking quite a lot about the new kind of branding of Sage and the kind of the upgrade of Sage. Which I've seen quite a lot on the Elizabeth line. So I've been on the Elizabeth line this week, which is the best tube line ever. I've just been selling it to Elizabeth before. But Sage is everywhere over that. So yeah, so everywhere I look at the moment, it's Sage, Sage, Sage. So Elizabeth, do you want to take us through, your part in the business and what you do within the business, and then we can kind of go from there, really.
Sure. So I'm the product engineering and support manager for Sage CRM, which is quite a mouthful. I manage the dev team and QA, but also the third level support team who are based in Ireland. So we bring out new releases every 6 months. We listen to customers and our partners who are very, very important for the way that Sage does business. Our partners are essential to our interactions with our customers.
Sure.
And yeah, that's what I do.
Is that because it's more like it kind of goes in within a channel when you say the partners, so they might integrate Sage into their product? So
yes, or to other Sage products.
Right, okay.
So they do the deployments. Sage CRM is a very customizable product. So if you have a partner who understands your business needs, they can create workflows for you, create entities for you, make it fit your specific business. So the partners are crucial to our way of working. Fantastic.
And do you find that useful as a way of kind of putting it together and building it in a very kind of I guess it's vanilla, like a bespokeable way, or would you prefer to have more like this is how it's going to be, or do you do quite a lot of like someone's done like this, so this is best practice? Or
we deliver a vanilla. We have used ideas from our partners and incorporated those into the product, but we deliver a vanilla, and then the partners customize it for their customers. And it makes support very interesting because we're giving them access to the database, so they can change the structure of the database. They can add new tables, they can add new columns. So it's a complicated enough product to support because it's almost infinitely customizable and extensible. But
sometimes people call you up and say, and you're like, what have you done? What have you done to my beautiful database?
Yes, exactly. You've lost that. You've deleted that. How did you manage to do that? They're very inventive, but it makes the product very useful to the customer.
Sure.
They build their business around their specific customized instance of CRM.
Yeah, exactly. And it's obviously a very important, recruitment, for instance, is so heavily reliant on the CRM and the database, and it's such a. I always get the feeling it's obviously. It's never quite as, I've always thought of SAP being such an amazingly successful software, but it's never quite as talked about, is it? It's always a bit, it's like the business software, so it's never really kind of talked about, you know.
Yeah, it's essential, but not
cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not cool. But it's an essential part of our we have long-standing customers that have used CRM for over 10 years, and they really couldn't do business without it. They rely on it.
So kind of going forward, obviously it's great to kind of find out about yourself and as a leader within the business. How big is your team? And I know it's kind of global as well, isn't
it? So my team is quite small. It's 7 people.
Sure.
But I interact with the support teams across the globe that do level 2 support. So we do level 3 and dev and QA in Dublin, but we have regional support teams that take care of the customers in Australia, South Africa, Middle East, UK, quite a big team there, Europe, and then North America as well.
So it's quite collaborative then. You're almost kind of a senior leader within a group of different teams and divisions.
I'm in the middle of the spider's
web.
That's
that's right. Yeah, and we talk a lot obviously about leaders. I mean, what are the challenges that you encounter as a leader where you, like you said, you're the kind of the person that's bringing it all together, kind of centralizing those functions. I mean, does that change being a leader itself?
It does, because it's not just your own team that you're looking out for. You're also looking at the needs of the business, the needs of the business in various different parts of the world, the needs of the customers versus the needs of the partners, which are not always exactly the same thing. So there's I'm wearing several hats at the same time. I'm managing dev, but I'm also managing support. Then I'm also managing what the product is actually going to look like, what's going to be in the next release. And how does that satisfy the partners, the customers, and our roadmap, and is feasible in the time that we have, because it is a really small team. So.
And is that something? I mean, just to talk technical. I mean, how do you kind of manage that? Because I'm sure quite a few of our listeners will kind of listen to that and think, that's all these different factions talking to me. How do you? And you obviously do it successfully, Elizabeth. How do you manage those? How do you overcome those challenges of many different, spinning so many plates at the same time?
You just have to see things from different points of view and make the best decision that satisfies most of the requirements. If I in the past I wasn't managing dev as well, I was only managing support, so I had to negotiate with dev to say what goes in, what has to wait. Now I'm in a way negotiating with myself, and I'm balancing what needs to be done and what's possible, and it is difficult. You really do have to kind of switch your viewpoint, but parts of it are easier because I'm only arguing with myself, not with the QA manager and the dev manager.
Go and sit in the garden and have a word with yourself. So.
Yeah.
And do you use any particular tools for that? Is that, do you use kind of, Slack tools or kind of PM tools or anything like that? Or is it really, you mentioned what I thought was really interesting. I have to make the decision, which I think is something leaders have already said. You have to, as a leader, that's one of the things you have to do, isn't it? Make that decision. You have to make a decision.
Yeah, we use Jira for pretty much everything that comes in and for everything that's on the roadmap. And it's a good way of visualizing what's there. I use graphs and charts to visualize where we are and where we need to be, and then we talk a lot. We have I have stand-ups, which are actually sit-downs because we're all working remotely, so we just sit down. Right, but we have stand-ups every morning with support and with dev, just to make sure that I know where we are at any point, what's falling behind, what's being successful, what hasn't worked as well as we hoped it would. I just need to keep track of everything, really on a daily basis.
Wow. My hat's off to you, Elizabeth. It sounds like
it
sounds a bit like my job, actually, to be completely honest. That's pretty much what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, is controlling stuff. And sometimes, coming out to that prioritization is so important. Like you mentioned there about choosing, like, what do we need to do, what can we do, what's possible. What are the key factors that you use when making those decisions?
about what's most important, what
that's
can
right.
wait.
Yeah, which path do we follow?
Yeah. Well, I look at the future direction of the product, and is it worth spending time on something that really is not going to have a long life? I also look at how many partners and customers are affected by a bug, for example. So if it's something that only ever occurs when you do this specific workflow and there's a workaround for it, well then, that's probably not going to be high on the priority list. Whereas if it's something that affects, vanilla customers, if it's something that affects data security, or especially personal data security, that's top of the list. So there are different things that sometimes it's just a quick fix that looks good, that we can get done with minimal effort, but quite a significant impact. So that might go in ahead of something that's more serious, but not as important for the customers.
Yeah, and obviously you talked a lot about Sage and the rebranding, and well, I did, because obviously it's before, and obviously it's been around. It's for 40 years, is that right?
Yeah, just over 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
And it's not a British company anymore, I believe. It was a UK company, wasn't it? I think
it still is. It's still headquartered in Newcastle. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
that's still the mothership is still in Newcastle. Yes.
Wonderful. And what does Sage see as the priorities? Because although I kind of did it down a little bit, CRM is obviously one of the big parts of IT, and so competitive, with the different players out there in the market. So what are Sage's main priorities, which I guess link into your product role?
I don't want to be falsely modest, but CRM is a really small product within the Sage portfolio. So we're not a significant product from Sage's overall strategy, which is basically the Sage Business Cloud. That's the direction of travel for Sage, and CRM is a useful integrated product for Sage Business Cloud, like 200, for example, which is very big in the UK. So we on our own, we're not that significant in the scheme of things. Obviously, to me, we are.
Very much so. Yeah.
But Sage's overall business strategy is the business cloud, and their focus remains on SMEs, on small and medium.
Sure. And I guess then when you link in with CRM, it's the I guess your priority then is the linking back into the cloud, and how to make those connections and make that work the best.
So if you have an accounting product like 200, it's very useful to also have a CRM product that integrates seamlessly with your Sage 200. So that's the beauty of having a CRM product within Sage, that the integration is seamless and you can transfer data across, and it's very user friendly in that respect.
Fantastic. And one of the things you mentioned there, and I think it's quite interesting how you said it's kind of both going on in your head at the same time, because obviously you're in charge of the support and the dev team, and myself, having worked in the IT industry, I know that there is an ongoing, it's a constant, there's always a constant friction, isn't there, I believe, between the kind of support teams and the dev teams. That's a fact, isn't it? Usually they don't always get on, as far as I know.
we get on famously.
Obviously in Sage everyone gets on perfectly, but other companies,
there is always that tension, because most of the time developers and architects want to do new features. That's the exciting part of development. What support is typically focused on is fixing bugs, because it affects the customers that are actually using the product. And I think that it would be very useful if developers spend some time with customers, and if salespeople spend some time with dev, and if everyone spends some time with QA, because
it all goes on them, doesn't it?
Yes, and they're a kind of gatekeeper, if you like. It should be QA's responsibility to say, yes, this is fine, this can go out, or no, this is really too flaky or too buggy to go anywhere near a customer. And I think that having mutual respect between different teams and a recognition of the difficulties of each one. Yes, there is friction between what dev see as their priorities and what support are being hassled by, which is customers wanting their bugs fixed. But you have to resolve that you balance out, the competing priorities of each team.
And the changes that have happened during your career with things like Agile, DevOps, for instance, are the two major changes that we as recruiters have seen. Do you think that's helped? Because that's making, like we started off this conversation in a collaborative way. Do you think that's made everything more collaborative, more
yes, I think I've worked in DevOps in the past, but I think Agile, the philosophy of Agile, whether you're actually doing Scrum or you're doing Kanban, the ideas behind Agile are the best thing that's happened to development and IT in general, because you devolve responsibility to the people who are actually doing the work. You give people autonomy. You create these teams that can be self-sufficient and that can adapt to life as it changes. Who can make decisions based on the information that they're getting, rather than following a plan that was hatched by somebody else 6 months ago with no concept of what's happening now in June 2022.
Exactly.
So I think Agile is
new clothes, but
brilliant. Yes.
And another thing, obviously, we've spoken to you a lot about, Elizabeth, is the idea of diverse teams. And it's quite interesting listening to you there, like, this team should work with that team and that team should work with this team so they can understand each other. It very much goes back to the whole argument about, diverse characters helping to build better teams, doesn't it? Yes,
because if you have everybody thinking the same way, you're only going to come up with the same answers you'd have come up with on your own. It's only when you have diverse opinions, different experiences, different points of view, that you get to see the pros and cons of your idea. The more diverse your team is, the more it reflects society outside of your company, the more likely you are to get it right, because you're not just thinking as you do, you're thinking as other people might. I think people have this notion that diversity means, well, we'll accept different people, but they can join our club, but then they have to behave like we do and play by our rules, and that completely misses the point of diversity. The whole point is that we benefit from having differences of opinion, of experience. That's why diversity is good for a company. It brings in experiences outside of your own.
And I think it's quite kind of interesting. So my question there you mentioned, like, let's say 4 teams. You mentioned the sales team, the architect, the design team, the QA team, and the support team. Are they, when you look at them, are they kind of they're diverse, but they're kind of similar within that team, if you know what I mean? I'm quite interested in,
you mean
is it a certain type of person in the support team? I'm just interested, is there a certain type of person in the support team? Is there a certain type of person in the QA team? And then if you put it all together, you get more diversity. Or are they all as equally as diverse, or not diverse at all?
It's interesting looking at Sage in particular, but also in other companies that I've worked in. Dev teams tend to be men primarily. There are very few women in dev teams. The teams are more gender balanced in support, in QA, and sometimes in product management. But I think that might be a contributing factor in the lack of diversity. What I'm really thinking of here is it's Caroline Criado Perez, I think. Her book highlights in a very sort of tragicomic way the problems when you have a single type of person designing and developing tools like mobile phones themselves. Mobile phones got bigger and bigger and bigger. Women typically have much smaller hands than men, and the phones got too big for them, but it's as if the size of an average woman's hand didn't even come into another one was phone apps. So we have apps that that tell us the quickest way home or the shortest way home, but not the safest way home.
Right,
and
yeah.
for most women, that would be a really useful feature to know the safest way home at night. So I think there's a lack of awareness, and it's until you're aware of it, you won't even notice how non-diverse your team is. It has to be pointed out to you that you've only considered 50% of the population, or you've only considered white people. So we had hand dryers that didn't recognize hands when the skin was dark, because they'd only ever been tested on people with white skin. And it's such a glaring in it, and it is almost funny, but it's not, because it shows how insulated the designers were, that they never considered testing this on any hands that didn't look like theirs.
So it's non-diversity of creative thinking in some ways. The starting process, and I guess that's where you need those differing points of view. And do you see, it's obviously something that you're very passionate about, and that's something you're kind of an advocate for. But do you see that kind of changing? You feel positive about the future with regards to business, and particularly with regards to technology, that this is improving? I don't just mean about Sage, but from other people you speak to in the network.
I have to say, Sage is one of the most comfortable places I've ever worked as a woman. It is more gender balanced than I think any other company I've ever worked for.
Sure.
So it's one of the benefits of working here. I see a change in the recognition that we need more women in IT. We need more girls studying maths and science, and then at school and then at university. And we need to not only allow them in, but listen to them. So there is a real problem when you only have 10 or 20% of any kind of difference, whether that's gender or race or ability. There's the dominant group, if you like, still steers the conversation and has control. And there seems to be a sort of a magic 30 or 33% threshold beyond which the minority can start speaking for itself. So I think we need to definitely reach that and hopefully exceed it in all types of diversity in order to get a better balance within all tech teams. Otherwise, we're going to carry on designing products for a small section,
a very small
of the population.
Pool. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I think is really important about diversity is obviously you've got your kind of global team that you work with. And again, these are the sort of things that would have changed, improved, made more easy, made more difficult over the last kind of 5 years, and in particular the last 2 years.
2 years, yes.
How do you find that, when you're working on a very global team with lots of time zones and obviously I guess that builds different types of diversity, but how do you find that?
Relatively easy. I grew up in South Africa. And I've lived in Ireland for just over 20 years. So I'm a dual.
You haven't lost your accent at all. It's not even a mix, Elizabeth.
And I still support the South African rugby team because that's
who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? They're very good. So.
And Ireland too, but but
also good.
Yes. Dual national. Sorry, where were we? Oh, diverse team. So in a way, diversity is global diversity is easier for me because I've lived on two opposite ends of the globe. South Africa itself is a very diverse society. We have 11 official languages, so Rhino should take a note of that. And so now I live in Ireland, and Dublin, not Ireland so much, but Dublin is a very diverse city. We've had net immigration for the last 20 years, and I'm one of them. So we live in a
very
diverse...
welcoming as well, isn't it? Very welcoming.
Yes,
I mean,
I have found it so. Yes, I've managed to fit in and become a local with the accent. But it's and our Sage office in Dublin is very diverse. And it's one of the things that we celebrated, especially when we were all in the office together. So I don't find it particularly difficult to speak to people in Australia or in North America or Germany. I speak a tiny bit of German, but that doesn't really help me because every German I've ever met speaks
English. Yeah.
So I find that really difficult. Time zones are tricky, and not here, but in past companies, I did work on teams split across continents. So we had a half team here and half in the States. In one team, we had a team based in the Philippines in a previous company, and that was really difficult. It was never really possible to create a cohesive team because there's no overlap with the Philippines. So it was always two teams with a sort of a handover at the end of each working day. It's possible with the States, especially if they're on the East Coast. But again, there's a kind of a handover at the end of the day.
I tend to think that, I mean, we've got our kind of US offices, and we've got a very strong kind of leadership team there, and that's where it's really kind of helped to grow. And I think unless you have, like, then that's where you're kind of always creating different divisions, aren't you? You can kind of interact, and what's important is to have a culture that kind of continues wherever the sun is, right? So the culture follows the sun, but I don't always think the leadership can it? You have to hope there's good leaders in the different places.
Yes. And if your leader is located in one team, that is going to be sort of the home team. But I think there's also a mistake in if you're leading a split team, to be the point of contact for the other team, because then you become a single point of failure. I think there should be as many connections between members of the team as they are members of the team. So
that's right.
N-1, and that's also a very agile idea, that it's not everybody talking up to the leader and then getting a statement or a decision from the top. It's everybody talking to everybody else.
So the person in the Philippines would never speak to the person in San Francisco. They would always speak to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, and that never works, does it? It
really doesn't work. You need everybody to be able to speak to everybody else. You have to have cross-channel communication with everybody. Otherwise, you're just the bottleneck and the single point of failure.
And for yourself, you're obviously always looking at the products and how you can see this driving forward. But what sort of kind of innovations do you see kind of going forward in the next kind of 12, 24 months that are really going to kind of change the way that your business is working, or that your software is working?
Innovations for us or for our customers?
For the customers. It's always about the customers, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I'm a little wary about what's going to happen in the next year. I think it's going to be a tricky enough year economically. The combination of low growth and high inflation is fairly unpleasant, and I think that a lot of SMEs especially are going to be under pressure to survive, and it's quite tragic considering that they've weathered the storm of COVID with a lot of support in most instances, but they've come through that only to potentially fail now because of circumstances beyond their control. So I think that we're going to see some businesses struggling, perhaps shrinking. It also doesn't even seem to be a good time for startups. It's going to be tricky, I think. I think we need to support the customers that we already have. We know that being that having a technology support for your business makes you more efficient and saves you money. But there's a barrier to adoption, which is money.
I guess like that kind of gives a real kind of how to put it, focus to your business when you're working with SME that's struggling. And for, let's say, for instance, CRM means they can't invoice at this moment in time because there's a bug, I guess. The bug's in the system, right? I can't invoice my customers, so I can't make some money. I guess sometimes it's a matter of life and death for a business. Like we need to sort this out, right? You have to prioritize things.
So that, I mean, that would obviously be a critical bug if they can't generate invoices. But there are
not saying that ever happens in Sage CRM. I'm not saying, I'm not using anecdotal evidence.
We're not.
Just worst case scenario, I think.
Yeah, so there are bugs that we have to fix very quickly, but there's also the more general usability bugs, and businesses have changed the way they work over the last 2 years. They've gone home, they've worked from home, and that's made the use of technology even more vital, because without that application that everybody can log into from wherever they're working, you lose track of what you're doing, of who your customers are, of who your suppliers are, of who your leads are. You might you might lose a lead because there was nowhere to record this potential. So we need to support the customers that we already have. We need to, we have very little control over the economic environment that we're all living in, but we have a lot of control over how we treat our customers, what kind of support we give them, how carefully we listen to what they need from us. And I think it's going to be tricky enough to acquire new customers in the next 12 to 18 months, but we can focus on keeping the ones that we already have and making sure that they are productive, and that they're getting what they need from us, and that we are adapting the product to see what they need.
And I guess that's an innovation in itself, isn't it? To kind of be as customer focused as you possibly can. And again, like when you talk about the product management element, bringing together the support and development teams and acting in the best interest of the customer, to me, that's one of the most important innovations that you can make. So many examples of tech that just don't listen, just don't or aren't making it easy to support. To get support. I mean, I use a well-known brand of printer, and I had to scan something on my printer in a batch, and I didn't have a clue how to do it. And then I kind of got through to them, and then I had to go on a WhatsApp thing, and I was waiting for 10 minutes, and so this is crazy. But then I just looked up a YouTube video and told me how to do it, right? So I guess this, and I think it's really important for people to know that that the customer is really, really important, particularly when the customer there's not as many customers about, right? Yes,
yeah, and I think coming back to the idea of dev not having any contact with customers, there's an attitude of some developers, I have to say, not the ones I'm working with at the moment, but some that usability is somebody else's problem, that it's not a real problem.
It's the UX guys.
It works in the background. The user interface is just window dressing, and it's not. That this is usually the only interaction that a user has with your product, and whatever it does in the background brilliantly, efficiently, with the most efficient for loop that you've ever written, that's useful if the customer is getting the results back quickly. But if they're not, or if they don't understand, or if they don't know what button to press, or they don't know how to get out of this place that they've landed in accidentally because the navigation is messed up, that's a frustrating user experience. And I think that it is those small daily frustrations that real users have with the product that really damage their perception of what this product can do. Easy things should be easy, and difficult things should be possible. And if a relatively easy thing like scanning a batch of pages was so difficult that you had to go and look on YouTube before you can do it, well, then the interface needs a bit of work, I'd say.
That's right. Yeah, it was actually quite easy. All I had to do was turn a flap, and then it was, I see how it works. So it was maybe they thought it was so easy they didn't even have to answer my question. But there you go. Yeah. So and for other leaders, in this position, looking at the next kind of 12 to 18 months, and how do I increase my customer success? How do I kind of keep my product map going? What's the best piece of advice that you think you can give them from what you've seen in your career in the industry?
Well, listen to your customers, or in our case, our customers and our partners. And just do it sounds really trite, but do the best you can with the resources that you have, and focus on the most important things first. You may have a long-term goal that is going to take maybe 8 months to implement. Then that might be what you really, really want to do because it's cool. But unless you're creating real value for real customers, you're really not doing your job. I was talking to, this is several years ago, I was talking to a marketing manager, a colleague in a previous company, who got tremendously frustrated with the product side and said, well, we don't sell software, we sell solutions. And I thought, well, this is rubbish because I wrote and supported software. But I quite quickly realized that what she said was absolutely true. We sell solutions to problems that customers have. And if your fancy, clever software doesn't solve or at least alleviate a problem that a customer has, then you might be you might have an interesting hobby, but you're not fulfilling the role of providing a service to your customers. We need to provide value to our customers, and we need to prioritize what they need over our longer term plans at the moment. I think I don't think now is the time to be creative for its own sake, and which is unfortunate because that's one of the reasons why we all ended up in tech, because it is a creative industry. I mean,
it's pushing the envelope, it's disrupting.
Yes, it's innovating, it's trying things, it's seeing how you can do this better. And there's a really I think if you still have the attitude of a first year student when you've been working in tech for 20 years, I think that's a really good attitude to have, seeing how things can be done better and never saying, well, we've always done it like that. That's never a good answer for why something is the way it is. If you don't know why something is the way it is, and your only answer is it's always been like that, then I think you need to ask a few more questions about why that is. And we all want to be creative, and we all want to make the products, do things better, do more things in more interesting ways, integrate with other tools. There's a whole universe of things that we can do, but at the moment, I think what we really need to focus on is what our customers want us to focus on. And it will weather the storm, and it'll be, it will open up again.
We can try crazy things in the future. I think, Elizabeth, on that fantastic and totally true statement, I think we'll leave it here. It's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you. Thank you very much. And
thanks for the opportunity.
I think what you've said there about making sure that you can supply the best possible service to your customers in all times, but particularly now, is really, really key, and that's what will help all businesses kind of come through and working together. So thank you very much for your time today, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, David.